There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I'm beating every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing everything on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up with a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. Pac-Man World 2 was released by Namco Home Tech for the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube in 2002, PC in 2004, and even a version for the GBA in 2005. Reception for the game was fine, scores were right down the middle, but the game sold very well. Can I beat this fondly remembered game? Pac-Man World 2 is a cutesy, short little game that took about 3.5 to 4 hours for me to beat. While I enjoyed playing it, I cannot say that it's that great of a game. I'd probably give it a 6.5 or 7, which is still a decent game. So let's go over the journey. The first thing we learn is the 4 ghosts that are usually in all the Pac-Man games, Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde, have accidentally taken this very special fruit off of a tree that was housing a demon inside. This fruit was made specifically to capture him in here and keep him contained. However, for some reason, I guess the ghosts don't know he's in there, so they take the fruit off the tree and toss it around like it's some game, and then they unleash him. However, the demon does ask them if they can help destroy Pac-Man and all of Pac World. Of course, they agree because they're terrible little ghosts, or aliens. I think they're aliens. And so this is the beginning of our story. They have unleashed the demon, they've taken the fruit, we need to get the fruit back and put the demon back in the tree. We begin our journey in Pac Village, where we can press buttons to our heart's content and collect a couple things. The buttons are a jump button, a butt bounce. When you jump in the air, you can press X again to bounce on the ground and get a little air. And then if you jump and press the square button, you can flip kick, like some kind of skateboard move. And if you hold the square button on the ground, you can do a rev roll. Rev rolls are fine, you have to do them in some areas of the game, and I use them sparingly because, again, you have more control running and jumping. You also have triangle, which is your action button, just kind of like accepting or opening things. And that's about it, except for the levels where things change. And there are levels where you do some skating and some swimming, and you have specific controls for those sections. As we run around the stages, we can pick up a couple different things. We can pick up Pac Dots and Power Pellets, which are practically just a score modifier and don't really matter that much. In fact, I barely ever collect them. You can collect Health Wedges, which at the very top left of the screen, you can see 3 Health Wedges. As long as you have one, you're still alive. You can also collect Fruit, which allows you to open fruit chests, which sometimes near the end of the game are important, other times they are not. And they count towards the end completion of a level, which you don't have to collect any, you just collect them if you want to get 100% completion. There are tokens, which will go towards the arcade machine, where you can play different little games, especially different Pac-Man games. You can collect extra lives and power-ups. There's a couple power-ups. There's one that changes you into a steel ball. There's one, the power pellet, that makes it so you can eat ghosts, although barely any enemies in this game are ghosts anyway. You can also shrink yourself down and go through like little doors and such. Otherwise, you go through the levels, and if you get to the end, you get to the end. There is nothing specific to collect to actually complete a level. So as long as you beeline for the exit, you'll make it. There are a couple places where having platforms appear because you've collected fruit to open fruit chests are important, so you'll have to collect a few. Most of the time you'll collect the fruit from killing enemies by flip kicking them or jumping on their heads. Otherwise, just go for the exit. As I said before, this game is short, and because the levels are fairly similar, I'm going to group them into each area, and I'll talk about each area and some of the cool things that happen. After we leave Pac Village, the first area is the forest. These several levels are very short and function much more like a tutorial than anything. You'll learn how to jump on enemies, jump from platform to platform, you'll jump on moving platforms, you'll use your rev roll to roll yourself off of small ramps and get over large gaps. You'll pick up lots of different little things like the Pac Dots and the fruits, although like I said before, none of them are actually necessary to beat the level. We'll push some buttons, fight some enemies, but in the end it takes about 15 minutes to get through all of the forest levels. It's not long before we get to the first boss, the Orange Ghost, and he is on top of a mechanical frog, and the game practically tells me exactly how to fight this boss. He spits his tongue out at you, and you jump on top of it and slam down with a butt bounce. After this section, we get him to half health, and he says, "Now my tongue is unbreakable." But then the game says, "What's that shiny thing in his mouth? I hope you don't rev roll at it." Okay, so I guess you land on his unbreakable tongue, rev roll into his mouth to hit his uvula, and then it hurts him. And that's it. You do it a couple times each time, and he's dead. I don't think I got hit one time. But this this is a tutorial boss and this is a kid's game, so it's expected. We finally get our first golden fruit, and we are well on our way to putting back this evil into the tree. Oddly enough, the next section is the Treetops, where you have lots and lots of chances to fall down into the abyss, which will kill you instantly. Of course, that's just expected as well. But this level has some pretty cool elements. Because this is the first time you're out of the tutorial levels, you now don't have very easy time of getting around each level. There are many pitfalls, there are trampolines to bounce on with different kinds of bounce animations. Some of them have just targets on them that will let you bounce anywhere. Some of them have arrows which will make you bounce in a specific direction, and some of them just have small bounces, and you have to really figure out if you're going to have enough air to make it to the next trampoline. There's a lot of platforming across small gaps. You also get to shimmy across things on the trees. We even get our first power-up pickup, which is this steel version, which allows us to avoid getting hurt on specific things and slam on specific things since we're heavy enough. This area is also pretty short to get through because suddenly I'm at the next boss. Now, the first ghost we fought was named Clyde. Obviously, the other ghosts have rhyming names: Inky, Blinky, and Pinky. Now, these three have the same type of boss fight, so you'll be fighting the next three bosses and they'll be fought fairly similarly. However, the level and the difficulty will ramp up as we get through them. So this first one sits in this kind of wooden bot with blades on the bottom and a glass shield over the top where the ghost sits. Now, all of them will look the same, however, their materials will be a little different and they'll be more difficult, like I said, but this one is rolling off of these ramps and hitting him in the face until you can jump on top of his head and butt slam on the glass dome. Around the level, if you rev roll off of the ramps, you'll land on small platforms that have health and one that even has a free life. This is probably to help the younger kids to go over and grab these things so that they can indefinitely keep fighting the bosses, which is great. It's a kind of a cool feature for a kid's game. If you have the guts to jump off the ramps, you can go get the health and the free life after every time you fail. Almost. Sometimes the life and the health pieces don't show up again. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's a programming error or it's intended, but it does happen. So you do want to learn quick enough to beat him, although this guy at the very beginning here is very simple. We smash his face and then smash the glass dome enough times to kill him, and he gives us the fruit. Our next set of levels are in the snow mountains, and we finally get just a little bit more than 15 minutes of gameplay before the next boss. And this is because the levels are a little bit more difficult. See, in this spot, there's a lot of ice, and you're usually going uphill. You must jump between rocks that have zero ice on them, and snow, of course, that doesn't have ice on it. And if you land on any ice at any point, you find yourself sliding back down to the beginning of the stage. And this happens quite often because the jumping and the platforms that you have to jump on are a little difficult to get to. Like, they specifically made it hard, so if you miss, you're gonna slide all the way back down. You'll also slide into enemies, into little pools of water that will just instantly kill you. So you have to take your time going up these hills. And most of your time spent the first couple levels is dodging all these ice patches that can send you back down. Eventually, we get to a part where we're being chased by a giant snowball or boulder, and we have to run towards the camera, a la Crash Bandicoot. And once we get through this section, we find that Pac-Man knows how to ice skate very well, and so we go down another hill on ice, collecting fruit and pack dots, making perilous jumps over large gaps. Not too long from then, we get to Pinky, who apparently is in love with us, and says that the evil dude said, "You don't even want me anyway, so I'm stealing this golden fruit." And by the way, the evil guy's name is Spooky. That's it, just Spooky. That way kids are a little scared to say his name. Ooh. Anyway, she apparently loves us, but I guess we don't want her. I don't know. I'm not really sure what's happening. But we fight her in the same kind of robot, except that you're in the snow. Now, she fires snowballs and little laser beams at you. You've got to be a little careful because you can't always rev up to hit her in the face and jump on her head. She'll make passes around the level, and then she'll position herself in a way that's very obvious for you to then go jump on her head or run into her face. Otherwise, you're just going to run into the blades, or she's going to hit you with a snowball and knock you into the abyss. After we beat her, we get our next golden fruit, and we move on. We move from the snowy mountains into an active volcano. Or maybe it's not active, it's just kind of inactive. I don't know. There's a lot of lava involved. And at first, we start with platforms, small platforms, over the abyss. And then we eventually move on to the lava section. And obviously, you need to not go into the lava, unless you pick up the steel ball power-up, which allows you to walk in the lava. There's a particular section that has us jumping from the lava to another lava piece. However, the way the lava works is kind of like you'd imagine quicksand to work. It sucks you down slowly, and as you jump, you will jump very small up until you hit the top of the lava. Once you hit the very top of the lava, you can then jump normally. However, you never know when you're going to jump normally, and you have to jump over small pits. So eventually I find if I just rev roll and kind of ramp myself over these sections, I don't have to figure it out. And it's really annoying. I mean, it's tough. Like, what the heck are they having me do here? And during this section, you are going from a central location that will continue to go deeper and deeper. And every time you go find a button, you'll go find the button, travel back to the central location, go down further, go to the next button, come back to that location, which will have you go down further. After braving the volcano and all the lava, we get to the very top where we fight the next ghost. And this is the boss fight that I was talking about earlier being very, very difficult. And there's a couple reasons for that. The very first one is, again, this is the same boss fight as the last two. He's in a robot that flies around the level. You have a central location and 4 platforms. There are nothing connecting the platforms. So if you fall into lava. Can't fall because the boss battle restarts at the last checkpoint. There are checkpoints to each of the boss fights. And as you get him down in health, you'll be able to start back as long as you have lives when you die at those different checkpoints at like 3/4 health, half health, 1/4 health, until eventually you beat him. And on one of those pillars, there is a free life that will sometimes be there and it sometimes won't. I found that at the beginning of the fight, every time I died, I was still able to get it, but once about halfway through, I was only able to get it every so often. So you gotta pay attention to if it's there or not because you'll be using them. The hard parts are ramping off of the middle platform to one of the platforms on the side. And this is very important because you need to dodge the stuff he does, get to those platforms to jump on his head because sometimes he will land near those platforms, and you also need to get the health and the free life. The problem is that the ramps in the middle platform are very weird and aren't always perfectly built. It almost looks like it's just slopes that you're gonna jump off of. So you need to learn exactly where each of the ramps are and how to hit it. Otherwise you will die. You just will die. And it's really frustrating because the second you ramp off wrong, no matter where you are in the fight, you're dead. You have to start over. And once you lose all your lives, you have to start from the beginning of the boss fight. And yes, they are generous, like I said, with giving you lives on that platform. But just think for a second, if it's hard to jump to the pillars to get the free life and you miss, you're gonna lose the life you were trying to get anyway, which kind of sucks. So it just screws you over in that aspect. That's just the ramps. I had a lot of trouble with the ramps. The next part is how quickly he fires these flaming balls at you and the pattern he does. He will shoot 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, then sometimes 3 over and over and over in different orders and different waves. And you'll have to just hope you can dodge them. Sometimes I couldn't. Sometimes I just said, okay, screw it. I'm gonna just ramp off onto one of the pillars after he starts shooting and hope I can dodge them from far away, which is possible, but then you run the risk of jumping off the platform wrong and not landing on the next one, which means you're dead. So is it worth it to jump off of them, or is it worth it to just get hit once or twice and hope you can make it to the next phase of the boss fight? Who knows? And the last thing that made it really difficult was when you get him down far enough to jump on his head when he's that low on health. He's very low on health, like you're about to win. There is a specific spot on his head, almost pixel perfect, you must land on. Where is it? Who freaking knows? Because I butt bounced on him over and over and over and over, doing no damage to him. Some people online said that you need to land on the ghost's hitbox inside. Some people said it's just the very middle of the glass dome. I don't know. Eventually I got it, but there was one instance where I bounced over and over and over as he flew around and I just couldn't hit it. And I thought, man, this is a little weird. Like, maybe they should have tested this boss fight out better before they send it off for these kids to play, because I was frustrated and I'm an adult. After the excruciating boss fight, we head to the ocean, where the first 2 levels we swim through as Pac-Man himself. These sections are a little difficult, mostly because of the 2 things you're gonna have to avoid in the level: bombs and missiles. The bombs are kind of tethered to the ocean floor. Sometimes they're just free floating, but they will home in on you when you get close. And sometimes there are large areas full of these bombs. And if they hit you, you most likely are gonna get hit by another one afterwards, because you slow down so much that the other ones are just homing in on you, slowly creeping up, and they'll hit you and do so much damage. And like I said, you've got 3 health, man. You gotta be a little bit careful. The missiles are also an issue because they're being fired at you during the entire level, even when you're walking through the minefield of bombs that slowly creep forward. And that sucks because now you have to pay attention to where those are being fired. So you really need to make it to a checkpoint and learn the next spot. That way you can get through it. Now, of course, if you lose all your lives, you have to start the whole level over. And that's very, very possible because you can die very quickly here. If a missile hits you and then the bombs hit you, you're just done. But there are lots of free life pickups, probably because they knew this section was difficult. It was still fun, however, especially since the difficulty was something that felt much more realistic to me. But for a kid, maybe it's a little too difficult. After we get through these 2 swimming parts, we go through 2 submarine parts where you actually get to fire your own missiles. These parts weren't really that difficult because you can kind of find a special spot on the screen to just drive your submarine through and fire rapid, and you hit and blow up every everything in the way and you just don't get hurt. So those sections were fairly easy. And once you get to the boss, Mega Whale, you have to fight him with the submarine. And this one is also pretty simple. Shooting your missiles at him over and over and over while slowly dodging things is about all you need to do. Much easier than the last boss. Our last set of stages is the Ghost Island, where we begin by rollerblading through crumbling walkways. And this part is actually really fun. You have to move quickly. Like I said, everything's crumbling. And there's lots of free lives around because they know you're gonna die. And I did. I died quite a few times. Some of them crumble so fast that when you move forward to the next one, you hit the edge of it because you're just slightly lower now, meaning you have to constantly jump between crumbling walkways. Otherwise, you just smack into it and fall straight down. And you're on rollerblades, so you're moving at high speed. This is really fun. Although the next part is in a cave, in a big dark cave with lots of jump pads and enemies to hit. This is one of the few places where you kind of need to get the fruits, since the chests that they unlock will provide extra jump pads for you to jump on. Now, you don't always need them, but it is really helpful. In fact, some of them almost feel necessary. However, the enemies that drop the fruits are usually nearby. That way you don't miss one at the beginning of the stage and have to trek all the way back. The very last level has a tree in the middle who is constantly taunting you, and he's got this flame in his mouth. He says you have to defeat his maze to win, and there is no boss fight after this. Once you defeat the maze, you do win. However, this is the longest level by far, mostly because it's a maze. And the other problem is that a lot of the walkways you are walking across can be jumped to and from different walkways, and I never really know the actual direction they want me to take. At the very beginning, yes, it's very clear, but eventually I can roll and jump on different platforms that seem like they're further ahead or further behind, and I don't know which direction they actually want me to go. I skipped a couple sections and accidentally came back and got confused. I didn't know what they wanted me to do. So eventually I just picked up every single checkpoint and exhausted every single area until I found, oh, here's a pellet that leads me into the middle. Not a bad stage, just confusing. I eventually beat it. It wasn't that long. It was about 15 to 20 minutes, which honestly is usually the amount of time it takes to beat all the levels in an area. But because they're so short, this one didn't feel that bad. It just took a little while. And once you get to the middle, the tree calls for Spooky to come help him, and Spooky comes to get you. Spooky's boss fight is pitifully easy compared to the last boss I fought that was called. And at this point, we take all the golden fruit we've gathered from all the ghosts, eat it, and turn into golden Pac-Man, which is really just the same as regular Pac-Man, except we can now smack Spooky for damage. Not that we couldn't before, we never tried, I don't know. We're golden, and we walk around and just kickflip him in the air. That's it, kickflip death. That's right, Tony Hawk would be so proud of us for doing all these kickflips. But he shoots all these different kinds of balls at you. lots of balls. There's lots of ball games. But they're all the balls that the other ghosts spat out at you, except that they'll do things like catch the ground on fire and home in on you. All the while, he's just slowly backing away from you to keep distance, and eventually he stops, and then you can jump up and kickflip him, and then you do it again. Doing the butt bounce on the ground over and over will pretty much guarantee you don't get hit very often, and you can just chase him into oblivion until you kickflip him to death, and that's it. Once we kickflip him to death, we put him back in the tree, put the golden fruit there, and everything is safe. Pac-Man World 2 is complete. That's right, game 72 is beat. While this game was very short and incredibly easy, I still had a good time playing. So, like I said before, I recommend playing this game. It's cheap to physically own and easy to emulate. It's a pretty fun game that you'd play maybe one long afternoon on a weekend that you have time to play. Like I said, it took me about 3.5 to 4 hours to beat, so expect it to be about that amount of time for yourself. And with that, thank you so much everyone who stayed this long in the video to watch Pac-Man World 2. Thank you to everyone in the stream for hanging out and helping me get through this game. And thank you to the YouTube, Patreon, and Twitch memberships. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been picking all the games for us. Anyone who's donated, in fact, this game was a game that was donated for and requested to play. So that's what we're doing. And we've got a lot more games coming up. So please come back for another video soon. I'll see you again. Later.